وافانا بحسنه حيانا نور الهدى وافانا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear viewers, welcome to Imam's Corner. Inshallah, today in this lesson we will be discussing verse number 15 and onwards from Surah An-Nazi'at. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Hal ataka hadithu Musa. Has there come to you the story of Musa? Sadaqallahul Azim. My noble viewers, in the previous two lessons, we have discussed two different themes. From verse number 1 to verse number 6, Allah Almighty speaks about angels that are selected by Him to extract these souls. And then from verse number 6 to verse number 15, Allah Almighty speaks about events that will announce the end of this world. Now from verse number 15 onwards, Allah Almighty is going to speak about Musa alayhi salatu wassalam. The question that comes to mind is that the first theme and the second theme, death and resurrection, have a ta'alluq, have a connection. What is the connection of Musa and the story of Musa with death? Musa and the story of Musa with the day of resurrection. So Imam Razi in Tafseer Kabir, he makes mention the ta'alluq, the rabat, the connection of theme number 3 of this surah with theme number 1 and 2. And it is amazing ta'alluq. As we all know, and this is the rabat now, this is the ta'alluq, the connection. As we all know that Nabi Kareem Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to give da'wah to the people of Mecca. One of the topics that the people of Mecca could not comprehend, or let me say they did not want to accept, was the day of resurrection. They were in total denial of life after death. And Nabi Kareem Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to see a very negative response from these people. So it used to hurt the Nabi of Allah. Now, speaking about death and akhirah in theme number 1 and number 2, we can understand promoting that, propagating that, giving the da'wah of that, and your people not responding positively is going to hurt the Nabi of Allah. So now Allah Almighty switches from the theme of death and the theme of akhirah to the story of Moses. And in mentioning the story of Moses, Allah Almighty is consoling Nabi Kareem Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Yani, study the story of Moses and you will realize that he was hurt by his people not once, not twice, but multiple times. And how did he deal with that? How did he deal with that? He moved on. He kept fulfilling the command of Allah Almighty. So in mentioning Musa alayhi salatu wassalam and the story of Musa alayhi salatu wassalam, Imam Razi makes mention that this is to console the Nabi of Allah. That the pain that you are experiencing right now, this treatment that you are being given by your people, is something that your brothers, yani Anbiya of the past, and in particular Musa alayhi salatu wassalam, have experienced as well. You will be amazed to know that if we were to study the Quran from cover to cover, many prophets have been made mention, and many prophets have been made mention by name. 25 more or less prophets have been made mention by name in the glorious Quran. But the prophet that has been made mention the most in the glorious Quran by name and by story is Musa alayhi salatu wassalam. And that's why the scholars of tafsir have made mention that Musa alayhi salatu wassalam is one of the greatest prophets amongst all prophets. And as you know that he was given a constitution as well, known as the Torah. And many prophets that came after Musa alayhi salatu wassalam, they educated their communities, their ummah, through the instructions of the Torah. So Torah is a divine book and one of the greatest books amongst a few books that Allah Almighty has sent. Now inshallah, in this theme number 3, we are going to discuss certain aspects from the story of Musa alayhi salatu wassalam. If we were to study the Quran, we will come to know that Surah number 28, Surah Qasas, Surah number 28 is a surah in which Allah Almighty makes mention of most of the story of Musa alayhi salatu wassalam. Then Surah Taha, Surah number 20 is another surah in which Allah Almighty has covered many aspects pertaining to the story of Musa alayhi salatu wassalam. But in Surah Nazi'at, the surah under discussion, Surah number 79, Allah Almighty does not make mention of much pertaining to the story. There are certain aspects that are highlighted, and the reason behind it is that at this point Allah Almighty is consoling the Nabi of Allah that you are going through this, but you are not the only one. Prophets before you have been through this as well. So before we recite the verses pertaining to this theme, Musa and the story of Musa, I would like to make mention of the backdrop. As we all know that Musa alayhi salatu wasalam fled Misr, Egypt, and he went to Madian. And in Madian he got married to a lady by the name of Safura. Many Mufassirun are of this opinion that Safura is the daughter of Shu'aib alayhi salatu wassalam. And Musa alayhi salatu wassalam stayed with his father-in-law, with his wife in that town for about 10 years. Now it was the burning desire of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam to return back to Egypt so he could meet his brother Hazrat Harun alayhi salatu wasalam, who was 3 years older than him, and his mother. But as we know that he fled for a certain reason, and there was fear that if I return too soon, the story will be very fresh in the mind of the people of Egypt. So it took him about 10 years. So after 10 years, he decided to return back to Egypt. Now, whilst he's traveling back to Egypt, an amazing event takes place. So this is the backdrop, and inshallah we're going to make mention of a few verses, and we're going to attach them with the verses of Surah Nazi'at that will give us a complete understanding of the journey of Moses. So let's consult, let's study the Quran. Verse number 15, Surah Nazi'at. Hal ataka hadithu Musa? Has there come to you the story of Musa? إذ ناداه ربه بالوادي المقدس طوى. When his Lord called him in the sacred valley of Tuwa. Subhanallah. When his Lord called him in the sacred valley of Tuwa. Now, my dear viewers, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is traveling to Misr. He wants to meet his mother and his brother. and his wife is pregnant. And whilst they are traveling, the wife starts to contract. And it is a very cold night. So Musa alayhi salatu wassalam, he wants to arrange a fire so the wife can remain warm in that cold night. So what Hazrat Musa alayhi salatu wassalam does? He tries to create a fire, but he does not succeed. So he looks around, and in the distance, he sees fire. He sees fire. And he says to his wife, "You wait here, and in a few moments I will return back with fire, and inshallah this will be comforting for you." Now, let's study Surah Taha, Surah number 20, and consult with the glorious Quran that what happened at that moment. So Allah Almighty says in verse number 9, Surah number 20, وَهَلْ أَتَاكَ حَدِيثُ مُوسَى, and has there come to you the story of Moses? إِذْ رَأَى نَارًا فَقَالَ لِأَهْلِهِمْ كُثُوا إِنِّي آنَسْتُ نَارًا لَعَلِّي آتِيكُم مِّنْهَا بِقَبَسٍ أَوْ أَجِدُ عَلَى النَّارِ هُدًى. When he saw a fire, he said to his family, "Wait." So he saw fire in the distance. He said to his family, his wife Safura, who was pregnant, "Wait, I will collect fire. Verily I have seen a fire. Perhaps I can bring you some burning brand therefrom, or find some guidance at the fire." فَلَمَّا أَتَاهَا نُودِيَ يَا مُوسَى. And when he came to it, yani to the fire, he was called by name, "O Musa." Verse number 12, "Inni ana rabbuka fakhla' na'alayk innaka bil wadi al muqaddasi tuwa." Verily I am your Lord, so take off your shoes, you are in the sacred valley of Tuwa. So these are three verses from Surah Taha, Surah number 20, and basically for your study, verse number 10, 11, and 12. The current verse that we are studying, the current verse from Surah Nazi'at, what does Allah Almighty say? إِذْ نَادَاهُ رَبُّهُ بِالْوَادِ الْمُقَدَّسِ طُوَى. Verse number 16. When his Lord called him in the sacred valley of Tuwa. Putting both verses together, we can understand that Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is traveling to Egypt. He tells his wife Safura, "Wait," who is in pain. He goes to collect fire. When he arrives there, from inside the fire, Allah speaks to him. It was a nur, it was a light. And Allah Almighty said, "Inni ana rabbuka," I am your Lord. But before that, from the fire, when Allah speaks to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, addresses him by the name. So you can visualize the state of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, that he has gone there to collect fire. But suddenly there is somebody speaking to him, and that being that is speaking to him recognizes him by name. So he must be very surprised. And then the voice, very clear, "Ana rabbuka," I am your Lord. But then there's an instruction, "Fakhla' na'alayk," take off your shoes. I would like to stop there and make mention of a ruling. When we enter the masjid, we take off the shoes. One of the reasons why we take off the shoes is because when we speak to Allah Almighty, or when we go to a place that is sacred, the place demands that it remains pure and clean. So Musa alayhi salatu wasalam has gone to the valley of Tuwa. It is a sacred place. And in addition to that, he is going to communicate, he's going to speak with Allah Almighty. So the space, the moment demands that you take off your shoes, because shoes collect particles of dust and sometimes impurity. So we take off the shoes. Likewise, when we go to the masjid is a sacred place. It is the house of Allah, Baytullah, the house of Allah. So the space and the communication that we are going to establish with Allah Almighty demands that we take off the shoes. But as we know that there is exemption to the rule, that a person that is in combat, for example, and he has shoes on, he can leave them on as long as he is satisfied that there is no impurity on the shoes. Many a times we see people, they pray janazah and they leave the shoes on, or they stand on the shoes. That is fine as long as the person is absolutely sure that there's no impurity on the shoes. But it is still better to remove the shoes and put them to the side, because we are going to establish communication with Allah Almighty. May it be the 5 daily prayers in the masjid, may it be the 5 daily prayers at home, or may it be the janazah, because we are asking Allah Almighty to forgive the person that has passed away. This dialogue, this communication demands that we take off the shoes. But let me say it again, if somebody is wearing the shoes or standing on the shoes whilst praying, as long as the shoes or whatever he is wearing is clean, salah will be accepted. So we should not make this a matter of contention. We should not debate around this. In conclusion, it is better to take it off, because whenever we speak to Allah Almighty, we should be in a complete state of purity. And that's why before we establish our prayer, we make wudu, we wash our body, we wear clothes that are clean, because this dialogue demands, this communication with Allah Almighty demands that we are in a state of complete purity. So Allah Almighty says to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, take off your shoes. You're going to speak to Rabbuka, your Lord. Now, I would like to make mention here the connection of this part of the story with the theme, the previous two themes. So we made mention previously that in the opening verses, Allah Almighty speaks about the angels that extract the soul, from verse number 1 to verse number 6. And then from verse number 6 to verse number 15, Allah Almighty speaks about the events that will announce the end of this world, yani the day of resurrection, akhirah. And we know that these verses came directly for the people of Makkah that were in complete denial of life after death. Now, this part of the story where Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, he goes to collect fire. It was not in his mind, or he did not even think about this. Or as we say in English, it was not in his wildest dreams that he is going to be deputed with prophethood. So he goes there to collect fire, so he can bring it back and comfort his wife. That's why he went to that fire. But suddenly he realizes that the Supreme Being is speaking to him, and not only speaking to him, has selected him for prophethood. It happened suddenly. He never thought about this. It happened suddenly. The main word I want you to focus upon is suddenly. So in this part of the story, there is a mighty connection with akhirah and with death. That death will happen suddenly. This world will end suddenly. Just like Musa alayhi salatu wasalam did not think about this at any time that he will be blessed with prophethood. It happens suddenly. Likewise, a person may be living a life of negligence. He may be in a bubble of ghafla. He may be enjoying life, and suddenly death will overcome. And likewise, those people, لا تقوم الساعة إلا على شرار الناس, when Allah Almighty decides that Israfil blow the trumpet the first time and everything be destroyed, it will happen suddenly. People will be in a bubble of ghafla, negligence. They will be unaware that there is a life to come, and suddenly the trumpet will be blown. Suddenly the trumpet will be blown, and they will find themselves exiting this realm and going to the permanent realm. Allahu Akbar. This is the connection of theme number 1, theme number 2 with this part of the story. Verse number 17. اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى. Go to Fir'aun, Pharaoh. Verily he has transgressed all bounds. Allahu Akbar. In this one verse, there's a mighty lesson that I'm going to share with you. Nowadays, the word Fir'aun in the Muslim community is used for treachery. So if a person is treacherous, if a person is zalim, a oppressor, many a times we call him Fir'aun. We call him Fir'aun. You are Fir'aun. So it has become a name, a title. Fir'aun has become a title for wrong. Wrong of the extreme. Zulam, oppression, so on and so forth. Allah Almighty suddenly gives Nabuwa to Nabi Musa alayhi salatu wassalam. And once he has been given Nabuwa, Allah Almighty immediately gives him a command. And what is this command? اذهب إلى فرعون. Go to Pharaoh. Who is Pharaoh? إنه طغى. He has rebelled. He has exceeded the boundaries, transgressed the boundaries and the limits. Go and invite him. I would like you to focus upon what I am saying now. Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, the pure soul, who has been selected by Allah Almighty to become a prophet for Bani Israel. Not only a prophet, but a prophet of a kitab, who is going to receive a complete constitution known as the Torah. The first command that comes to him is go and give da'wah. Invite Pharaoh. It is not going to be an easy task, because Pharaoh is tagha. In Surah Dukhan, Surah number 44, verse number 31, Min Fir'aun innahu kana aliyan min al-musrifin. Allah Almighty says that Fir'aun has transgressed the boundaries. He's become a musrif, a person that is transgressing the boundaries. There's no boundaries for him. In this statement, you can find that Allah Almighty has great love for His people, great love for His makhluk. That Fir'aun, as we will later on study, has made the claim to divinity. Ana rabbukumul a'la. He has murdered so many innocent children. He is a tyrant. He is a zalim. He is doing dhulam on the earth. But the first duty that is given to Moses is go. Bring him back on the right path. So this indicates the love that Allah Almighty has for His makhluk. And the second thing that we can learn from this statement, this order, is that every person has the potential to make a U-turn. Because if Pharaoh did not have the potential to make tawbah and the U-turn, then this order that has been given to him, that go to Moses, go and invite him to the right path, it does not make sense. It does not make sense. So every person, wherever he may be in the path of sin, how far he has gone in the path of sin, it does not matter. Every person has the potential to make a U-turn. It is a matter of asking Allah Almighty to pardon and to forgive, and a person finds himself on the right path. And as I made mention previously, the word Fir'aun has become the title of wrong. No person in this world right now can compete with Pharaoh. And I hope no one can compete with Pharaoh in wrong. So if Allah Almighty orders the Prophet to go and invite him, yani Pharaoh has the potential to make a U-turn, then any person around us that we are working upon, that we are concerned about, our first step towards him is to try to bring him on the right path, rather than judge him, label him as doomed. So this was the important message that I wanted to share under this verse. There's another mighty message that I would like to make mention under this verse, but to understand that message, I would like to attach to this current verse a verse from Surah Taha. Now, as I made mention that Surah Taha and Surah Qasas are two surahs in the Quran that speak about Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, and the story of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam in detail. So let's go to verse number 42. Keep in mind the verse that is under discussion, idhab ila fir'aun, go to Pharaoh, innahu tagha, he has rebelled. Now Allah Almighty says in verse number 42, Surah Taha, Surah number 20, idhab anta wa akhuka bi ayati wa la taniya fi dhikri, go you and your brother with my ayat, with my proofs, and do not you both slacken and become weak in my remembrance. Listen to the next verse, next two verses. Idhaba ila fir'aun innahu tagha. Very similar to the verse that we are discussing. Idhab ila fir'aun innahu tagha. Idhaba. This is the dual of idhab. Ila fir'aun innahu tagha. Go both of you, Moses and Harun, Musa and Harun, to Fir'aun. Verily he has transgressed all bounds in disbelief and disobedience, and behaved as an arrogant person. Faqula, pinnacle of this theme, verse number 44. Qula faqula lahu qawlan layyinan la'allahu yatadhakkar aw yakhsha. And speak to him mildly. And speak to him mildly. Perhaps he may accept the nasiha, the admonition of fear Allah Almighty. Subhanallah. Allah Almighty is giving instructions to most probably the best two people on the earth, Musa and Harun, that go to Pharaoh. But when you speak to him, and keep in mind Pharaoh has made a claim to divinity. He is a oppressor and a zalim. But what does Allah Almighty instruct Musa and Harun to do? That when you go to him, be soft and gentle in your approach. Be soft and gentle in your speech. So it doesn't matter. Our words should not be dictated by the sin of the person. Our words, our body language, the construction of our sentences should not be regulated by the sinister life of the person that we are inviting. By verse number 44 and by the life of the Nabi of Allah, we are to be regulated by good mannerism, by good speech. قُولَا لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا لَعَلَّهُ يَتَذَكَّرُ أَوْ يَخْشَى. And keep in mind, whoever we are inviting, he can't be worse than Pharaoh. And you, the inviter, cannot be better than Moses. So if we are not better than Moses as a da'i, and the person that we are inviting is not worse than Pharaoh, then the same law applies to us. That we need to be mild and soft and compassionate in our approach. And that's when you find positive results, if positive results are destined from that communication. We have run out of time. I would like to recap what we have studied. In verse number 15 of Surah Nazi'at, Allah Almighty switches from the theme of death and akhirah to the story of Moses. I made mention the reason behind it, that Imam Razi says this is to console Nabi Kareem Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then in verse number 16, Allah Almighty makes mention of that blessed moment in the life of Moses where he goes to collect fire and he is blessed with prophethood. I made mention of the connection of this with theme number 1 and theme number 2, that just like death will take over suddenly and akhirah will take over suddenly and we will be resurrected from our graves suddenly. Likewise, Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was given nabuwwah suddenly. He did not realize that in a few moments he will become Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Not the Musa, but Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. He's going to be upgraded. He's going to move through the ranks so quickly in a few moments because he's going to be Musa Kalimullah. Then we made mention that Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was ordered, and that order has been made mention in Surah Taha, Surah number 20, فَخْلَعْنَ عَلَيْكَ, take off your shoes. I made mention that the area, and that is the Muqaddas Tuwa, and the communication with the Supreme Being demands that we take off the shoes. Because many a times the shoes, even if it is clean, there's no impurity, it does collect particles of dust. So it is better that we take off the shoes even if they are clean. But if a person wears them, all right, whilst praying salah or janazah, and he's wearing the shoes and there is no impurity, the ruling is salah will be accepted. Then the next verse, the last verse that we study today is idhab ila fir'auna innahu tagha, that the first command that was given to Moses was that you should go and invite Pharaoh to the right path. And under this we made mention of a few things, that every person has the potential to make a U-turn. Right, that's number 1. Number 2, that the person that we are inviting cannot be worse than Pharaoh, and we cannot be better than Moses. So the verse number 44 from Surah Taha should be in our mind when we are inviting people, and that is قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا لَعَلَّهُ يَتَذَكَّرُ أَوْ يَخْشَى, that we should be mild, soft in our approach. Allah Almighty allow us to inculcate these lessons in our life. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
هدى وفانا بحسنه حيانا نور الهدى